Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Denim. As a business owner myself, I personally know the importance of financial stability and preserving cash flow to help navigate through any freight market. With Denim's comprehensive service offering, you now have an all-in-one financial partner whose platform includes factoring, payments, freight audit, document collection management, and analytics, which help keep your business financially healthy and increase your team's time to focus on revenue-producing activities. You can also take advantage of Denim's free credit check, which they perform on all of your customers. And Denim will proactively reach out to you if they spot any signs of credit deterioration. Finally, Denim always pays your carriers first. As a broker, this is imperative to preserving your credit score in the market, which ultimately helps you become a broker of choice to your carrier partners. Are you ready to learn more? Visit denim.com to schedule a demo today. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It's the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And our topic today is about as real as it gets out there. And, we're going to be talking about DOT Blitz Week. And based on what I saw on social media, it looks like a lot of people are having a tough time digesting what happened this week. And we're going to talk about that today, you guys. We're going to break this down. What does this actually mean? And then kind of what's going on out there in the market as a whole. And like I say, you guys, all the time, you guys, I only speak with transportation professionals on this show because there is no theory. These are people who are actually doing the job out there. And with that being said, I got my man Cody Kaler back on the show. Cody,
what's up, buddy?
Is going on, man? How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you doing?
Oh, dude, I'm doing fantastic. I'm we were texting yesterday about this, and I'm just really looking forward to breaking this down because it's scrolling through social media these last couple of days, you saw a lot of people who clearly have never been in a market where they've had any pushback on rates, any slight drop in capacity. And it was very evident out there. And, not everybody, right? And I get it. It sucks when, you can't just tell people what to do and make a bunch of money doing it. And, it's a tough pill to swallow. But for those of us who have been around the block for more than a couple of years, we all welcomed that happening, a lot more than we should. And, like the example, like when I was texting you, like, no joke, man. I had to make 50 outbound calls to cover 2 local loads for a customer of ours. It was, last minute opportunity. We work with these guys 12 months out of the year. So I'm not going to ever say no to anything. And, and we made 50 calls and we lost money on those loads, but I serviced my customer in that one because that's what you have to do in those moments. But I was just like happy. I was like in the zone. I'm like, dude, this is how I used to cover freight back in the day.
Right.
Man. So it was fun.
Oh yeah. Blitz Week. I remember my first Blitz Week, and my VP at the time had kind of warned all of us on our previous week's call, like, hey, Blitz Week's next week's everybody, knows what that means. And I'm like, I don't fucking know what that means. Right. And, he kind of walked me through it, but until you live it, that first week I was like, why can't, I'm used to covering these loads before 9 a.m. in the morning with my regular carriers, and all of a sudden nobody has capacity. And you go to the load boards and you're like, holy shit, rates are up $1,000 from where they were last week. Like, what's going on? When you live at that first Blitz Week, it can kind of be a gut punch, but it's it's part of the game. Like every May, you guys got to expect that. And then if you move, we move a lot of produce, so a lot of California freight. If you move California freight, you have the Diwali festival week, right? Which is like usually October, November. It's different every year. It's the same thing there. Like your capacity is going to shrink 30 to 40%. Your rates are going to skyrocket. But guess what? People at grocery stores still got to eat. People like houses are still being built, right? For the freight that you're moving. Projects are still being done. Like that freight still has to move. But, that's the week that you got to really prove your chops as a broker. If you can't come through for your customer on those weeks, you don't deserve to make profit off of them the rest of the year, quite frankly.
Trust me, I'm in your customers' ears, you guys. I'm just throwing that out there.
You and me both, buddy.
Cody is in their, especially if you move produce. Cody's definitely in your customers' ears out there. And again, I'm not here to come out here and laugh at people and say I told you so or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you guys, this is like, you need to look at that. Like if you struggled this week at all, you need to look at it from this perspective only. There are clear gaps in your approach, and that is a very clear indicator of what can happen. I don't know if the market's going to flip in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. I'm not going to be an idiot because I don't need your guys' clicks to post some outlandish shit. But what I need you guys to be prepared for, though, is that is a very real situation of what a carrier market looks like. All right. You are going to hammer outbound calls to cover freight. You're going to break even. You're probably going to lose some money on it, and you're going to have to recalibrate your entire operations in that time. So use that as a clear indicator about what will come. I don't know when, but that's what that market looks like.
Yeah. In fact, I was watching the e-carrier check guys this morning. Right. And I asked a question on there, like, did you guys see a major uptick on your platform during Blitz Week? And they were like, it was like Christmas for us. It's like this and holiday weeks is like, you can see just the usage go through the roof. And for me, the reason I asked that is because you got to start thinking, if you're being reactive to these weeks instead of proactive, you're losing. You're already losing, right? Like, so to your point, you got some gaps in what you're doing. You should be using products like e-carrier check and highway and a couple others and to do your sourcing all year long. So just because you had an easy time a week ago covering loads doesn't mean you get to sit back on your hands and not still be reaching out to carriers who potentially could be running the lanes that you guys are always running. You need those backups. You need carrier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on every single one of your power lanes, right? And if you're not, then you guys are going to be suffering the same way that I saw a lot of people on social media this week, same as you, Chris. Just, oh my gosh, is this normal? Like, what's going on? Or, the one that I saw that kind of stood out to me was, are you guys taking a mental note of all these carriers that are raising their rates this week? And it's like, look, if you don't understand that carriers are going to make money this week, more money than they're going to on a normal week, you're failing to. Like, you should take care of your carriers this week. If they're giving you capacity this week, the same amount of capacity they were the previous week, you should expect a premium on it. And I'm not saying that you should be happy to pay it, but take care of your carriers when you need to.
Yeah.
That's
dude, I saw that post. I saw that post and I'm like, dude, that is so ironic that there's a broker out there saying, oh, take mental notes of what these carriers are doing, as they're probably the ones who are posting shit for $1
exactly.
a mile and
right?
$1.20 a mile for full truckloads, like, again, partials, different situation there. But it's like, dude, I see some of this stuff. And again, like, from a competitor standpoint, you guys, trust me, I'm salivating at this shit. When I see stuff like that from a competitor, I'm like, I'm going to fucking decimate you. All right. I truly will. The real players in this industry, this is what we've all been waiting for. We've been waiting for this to happen, because this is when we can show and shine with a lot of our customers, because, there's going to be new lanes that come up. Because again, it's like, hey, we have established carriers. Awesome. But do you have them for every lane? What are you going to do if you have to source new capacity for a new opportunity that comes your way? My example, it was an existing customer of ours. We've worked with them for over 3 years. I've never moved that specific lane for them. So I didn't have any carriers on that one. It was a local load. It was like 130 miles. But again, we went out there and we made it happen, and we serviced our customers. And that's just the approach you need to take. Because again, I feel like a lot of people like sit in the transaction, Cody, and they're like, oh, we're going to lose money on this one. But they don't look at the fact that they hypothetically made 10 grand on that account the last month. They're just looking at how much am I losing today, and I don't want to lose money.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got a budget for a few weeks out of the year where you're just going to take a bath, right? For me, the three that always pop up for us, at least moving when we move, is Blitz Week, Diwali week, and Christmas to Jan 1, right? Those weeks are always super tough. My expectations are not to make money those weeks, but my expectations are our tender acceptance is still 100%. And to your point with what you just mentioned, that's probably a lane that someone else failed on that has been running that for that carrier, right? You were able to swoop in, be the hero, take care of that carrier, or take care of that customer. And now potentially that could be something that they're going to reach out to you on and say, hey, these guys failed me on this week. So I'm going to weave Chris into the mix on this. And maybe it only means one load per week or one load per month, but maybe it grows into more and more and more. If you're not aiming to be the hero on those difficult weeks, you will never grow your customer base ever.
Dude, and that's the thing, right? Like, and just jumping all over it. And you know what? Maybe you didn't find an option. Maybe your customer hit you up for a new lane and all of that, and you didn't find an option, but you were working it. You were communicating that with them. Your customers notice that stuff, right? Because, and that's another thing too. If you're actively moving freight right now, which a lot of you guys are who are listening to this show, just the fact that you're working it and presenting options for your customers, if your competition's not doing that, because they're like, dude, we're not gonna do this. Like, it's too hard to cover freight today. Again, those are those little competitive edges of separation that people notice out there. Is it going to get you a ton more volume? Probably not, but they notice who's working their freight and who's not working it, because they all knew it was DOT inspection week this week. Every shipper out there knows what was going on, and are you servicing them in that time?
Yeah, exactly. And realistically, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but we saw capacity and rates today return to last week's levels. I mean, and that's typical, right? It's usually, Blitz Week is always that Tuesday through Thursday, and you start to see your major capacity crunch, at least for OTR stuff, the previous Friday, right? Yep. Because they're trying to balance when they're going to actually hit those checkpoints. And just a shout out to the carriers. I know it's not everybody is like, oh my gosh, we're not going to pass an inspection, so we're not going to run. Some of them just don't want to deal with it, right? Like, it's not that they're not in compliance. It's just they don't want to deal. For us, coming out of Salinas, that's where the big produce hub is during the summer. Coming out of Salinas, there's always a checkpoint. And there's been years where there has been so many trucks piled up. They're 12 hours sitting at that checkpoint. Yeah. So like there's a lot of carriers that just don't want to deal with that shit. And that's where your 30 to 40% dip in capacity comes from. There are some that are out of compliant. We all know that, but like, it is what it is. But, like, you guys just got to understand how to work it. And then, so that Friday is when you start to see that capacity crunch. It all bleeds off until about Thursday. The last day of the Blitz, you actually see capacity start to come back in, because they know they're probably just going to go get loaded with something. And then they'll sit until midnight and then they'll boogie out. Right. Yeah. And they won't hit any checkpoints after that. So guys, just plan it. Like, if this was your first Blitz week, lesson learned, take your black eyes, take your lumps. But to Chris's point is like, don't fail your customers. These are the weeks that you guys can really shine. And if you don't, there's plenty of people like Chris or myself or my team and Chris's team that will absolutely, for lack of a better term, we're going to put our foot on your throat and we're going to go for it. Right. Like, we're not going to shy away from the opportunity. And I mean, that's what we're all here for. So, just keep it up. But I mean, lesson learned, definitely learn from this year. I saw way too much on social media about people complaining, oh my gosh, this is a lane that normally runs at 2,500 and I'm getting 2,900 quotes. And I was like, 400 bucks? Yeah. 400 bucks. Are you kidding me? You should see some of the OTR crap we got going, like coast to coast, that are up $3,000 this week. Like, what the hell? It's just, I don't know, rookies, I guess. Right.
Dude, it's the truth, man. And from my perspective, I look at it like this. I truly look at it as from a sales perspective here. Like, if you're out there, and it's also very clear on who's not cold calling and not actively developing business when they're out there complaining about this, right? Because it's like, if you've actively cold called again, even if it's just at the half of the level that I do. So it's like, again, not here to brag, but I make 55 cold calls every single day. Business, freight permitted, shit happens. I can't sit here and say every single day, but when my freight and our freight is moving and we have the time, we are dedicated to developing new business during our off time with that. And for the amount of like that I saw out there of those posts from individuals, Cody, they're clearly not selling. They're clearly just managing a book of business, because it's like, dude, lose $400 on a load for an existing customer, fucking done.
Right. Sign me up for that all day.
Sign it up. I will do it and move on, because if you're actively cold calling and prospecting, you know that it's a 99.999% we're good right now when you're talking to people. And so it's like, I would never risk that especially for a couple $100, man. Yeah. Does it suck? Of course it does. But no, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, none of you complain when you make $1,000 on a load or $500 on a load. Zero complaints. On the contrary, you're fucking chest bumping each other. You're high-fiving each other about how great you are. And if you're that good, you better be good enough to lose $500 on a load.
Easily. Yeah. It's an investment, right? Like, this is an investment in your partnership with your customers. You got to take it in the pants on certain times during the year, knowing that, especially if you're dealing with 6-month or 12-month long contracts, like, who cares? A week is, a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things at that point in time. You guys it is so hard to get contracted freight, right? It is so hard to work with some of these enterprise guys that everybody wants to, they're all chasing the same guys, right? Like, it's so hard. So if you guys fail those guys, trust me, I was on the shipper side for 12 years, right? Well, 13 years technically. And we used to have what we refer to as fucking Fridays, right? Where it's like you get 20 loads that you thought were covered. All of a sudden a carrier or broker fails, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're pulling your hair out and you're like, fuck it. And then that's when as a broker, if you have made those cold calls and you've built those relationships, even if you're not moving any freight with them, that's your opportunity. But don't be the guy dropping those 20 loads unless there's a really good reason. I know shit happens, right? But like, don't be that guy just because you're going to lose a couple bucks. I know several brokerages out there, especially large ones, that literally say you cannot lose money on loads. So, if you're a sales rep and you're being told you cannot lose money on a load, and you have a contract and you run into a week like this week, I don't know how they operate. I don't know how. I wouldn't last as a sales rep doing that, right? Because to me, it's always an investment. It's like, you got to take your licks and take your black eyes, because at the end of the year is all that matters, right? If you make money on the account at the end of the year, who cares if you have a couple loser weeks?
And that's exactly it, right? If you look at the rolling 12 months and say you made 50,000, but you lost $5,000 in the year, again, you paid $5,000 to make 50. I will give anybody $5,000 today to get $50,000 back. Like, sign me the fuck up to that, right?
Yeah.
And again, but I think it's just to the point though that it just shows you how the market has been for a very long time. It's been really easy to cover freight. And I talk about this often. When it's easy, you forget what it's like, or maybe you've never experienced it, right? And what you were saying earlier was a great point. Maybe this was your first real DOT inspection week. Maybe you came into the industry in 2022, 2021, and it's been easy to cover freight. There hasn't been a ton of pushback. This is what, and if you followed my show for any amount of time, this is what I'm describing. All right. These last couple of days, this is exactly what I've been describing out there of how a market shift can start. All right. Because is this going to be prolonged for an extended period of time? I'm not here to say yes or no, but this is how things start. Okay. So we had Blitz Week. Now, what comes up here in the next couple of weeks? Memorial Day. There will be rate compressions. There will be compressions around then. Then the 4th of July hits. And I want you guys to pay attention to this, all right? Because no talking head in freight will tell you this at all, because they don't fucking know. This is what are the clear indicators of a true national market shift, is how long does it take to bounce back? Yep. All right. So from the inspection week perspective, if you see capacity crunches going into next week and elevated rates going into next week, and then it starts to dissipate off at the end of next week, which I don't think it will, because it rolls into Memorial Day. I think this next stretch of time is kind of a clear indicator. If there is no change at all, if it is like Cody was saying earlier, it might snap back to normal, I think we're good. All right. This will continue down. But if it doesn't, and then it stretches out past Memorial Day, that is your indicator that capacity is starting to dwindle out there. Is it a full-fledged market shift? Absolutely not. But those are those indicators. Now with the 4th of July, same situation. Pay attention to those little things. How long does it last when rates spike and capacity drops? Is it a week? Is it 3 days? Is it 2 weeks? Start paying attention to that and how long it takes. And then those are those indicators, you guys. No data out there is going to be able to show that and tell that, because data is all based on past, and it's a controlled future guess. But that right there is the real nuts and bolts of how you can tell.
Yep. And most data is an average of an average, right? And we know how that dilutes down the reality of it. And, one thing I'd like to add to that is the severity of those peaks, right? Mm-hmm. If it's very severe during those peaks, even if it's a small amount of time, that tells you how fragile it is, right? If it's just a small, Blitz week, if you see a 10, 20% increase, to me, that's an easy Blitz week. Like that's tame compared to a normal one. But if you're seeing rates spike in 50, 60, 70% on some lanes, that's telling you that is a very, very, very fragile market. And all it takes is a little tiny tip, and then it's over, right? So, I have no idea, but you are absolutely right. From Blitz week through July 4th, it's always a rough 6-week stretch.
Yep.
How rough that is depends on your relationships going into it, but also how's the market looking? At least for us on the produce side, I'm not hearing a lot of great things demand wise. Unfortunately, from a lot of the growers, I'm hearing a lot of products sitting or getting shipped to processing plants, getting frozen, getting canned, stuff like that. The fresh demand is definitely not what it was last year. Mm-hmm. That has me a little concerned. But if you look at some of the credit card data and some of the other stuff out there economically, it's going to take a while for us to pull out of what's going on. And, typically what's going to happen is your higher dollar items at the grocery store, at least food and bev wise, that's where you start to see the decline. People start buying more shelf stable stuff that's a little bit cheaper, and it's going to last them a lot longer. I don't know about you, but like I never have a package of strawberries last longer than about 3 or 4 days in my fridge before they start turning to mush.
48 hours. Max.
Yeah, exactly. But I keep 3 or 4 bags of frozen strawberries for my smoothies all the time, right? So, that's where we're seeing a lot of that. We have warehouses as well, and we're seeing our turns have drastically decreased this year. So there is product that's sitting an extra couple of days in warehouses compared to last year. That's indicative of demand being lower. So, it is what it is. I mean, every industry is different, but at least on the fresh produce side, we are seeing a very weak demand season, which sucks because this is the first year in 5 years that we haven't had any water issues, either flooding or drought. So we actually had a great harvest. This is the first year that we had such a good harvest. And, probably 30 or 40% of it's just not even, in demand right now. So it kind of sucks, but it is what it is, man. It's freight.
Yeah, dude. So how do you shift from what would you recommend out there to any, say produce carriers or produce brokers as well, who are sales reps? How would you prospect new business saying all of this, right? Do you shift everything over to the frozen and the preservatives and everything style shippers, and then start going after them? Because do you think that there might be some incremental increases in demand with that?
Definitely, especially down the line, right? As all this stuff's going to get flash frozen or canned, it's going to sit for a while, right? But when that demand is going to pick up, because it probably is showing it. I haven't looked at the data from the actual Grocers Association yet, because they usually every month they'll release did center store grow, did dairy deli grow, all that fun stuff. I haven't seen the latest data on that, but I definitely would. I mean, right now it's very difficult to land new customers anywhere, but fresh produce is very difficult because the demand's not there. However, if you haven't expanded, into some dry goods or frozen or dairy, deli, meats, there's always a bull market somewhere. Yeah. There's, and you just got to find it. So you got to have a really solid book of business, but I would definitely recommend you guys, if you are a produce broker or produce carrier, to start expanding your horizons a little bit, because the sources that I work with are saying that the projections for this summer is not good from a demand standpoint. They're saying worst in 10 to 20 years, some of them. Mm-hmm. So definitely expand your horizons, guys, because I don't think it's going to get any better between now and the start of Yuma season.
Yeah, it's and just speaking on the flatbed side of things, the open deck side of things, from a business development standpoint, it is identical to everything you're describing right there, Cody. There's actually muted peak seasons. Like a lot of our prospects that we're talking to on a weekly basis, because we've been, we obviously make cold calls, you guys. So we've been talking to them since January and February, and they had all originally said, they're like, hey, mid to late March, early April, that's our busy season. Stay in touch with us. We're expecting that. And it's been muted, man. We're talking to them now and they're like, dude, we should be booked up solid right now. And they're like, we're just not there. And that's building materials, that's precast concrete, that's pipe, and that's construction equipment. Those are the main kind of commodities that we're really going after. And that's what we're being told right now as well. So from a business development standpoint, I truly feel like everybody at the end of the day, I know the rejection sucks. All right. I know it's the worst feeling in the world. All right. Because it pisses me off too, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a human being. And I know that I can add value to my prospects, but I also understand that at the end of the day, not everybody is going to want to onboard you. So again, you got to stay in front of people, because I feel like this, if anything, if I'm looking back over these last couple of days, I truly feel, I feel way more optimistic about things changing than pre-Blitz week. Like that to me was kind of an indicator, Cody, on if it was going to be, the status quo for the rest of the year or not. And I got a little happy when I saw those posts out there, and I was out there making outbound calls to cover freight. I was getting excited about that because I'm like, dude, this is exactly what we need to happen. And again, be prepared, you guys, because when I see people talk about a market shift from a broker's perspective, I don't think they're actually understanding what that market shift will look like, because it will be continued rate compression from a broker standpoint, because customers are going to dig their heels in. They're going to say, nope, we're not paying anymore. Carriers are going to raise their rates. And if you were making 15% on a load or 12%, you might be down to 6-8% for the foreseeable future to continue to move their freight as the rates continue to increase. And then a rebid inevitably happens out there. So again, you guys be prepared for that. And then be prepared to make outbound calls to cover freight, because that's what it's going to take in these next. And who knows, man, there could be 3 straight years of that. You never know. What if this next market lasts just as long as the one that we are currently in, which has been essentially going on for 4 years now?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you keep hearing, is this is the longest down to the right we've seen in a long time, right? Even though we're kind of in that trough area right now, that can last for a while. But if we see the same length of time with everything going up and to the right, like, what are you guys going to do if you guys aren't prepared for that? Everybody who came in during COVID or came in right after COVID, yeah, like that's not real brokering. I mean, quite frankly, it's not, right? Like if you haven't, everybody pre-COVID knows, brokering is up. It's a heart monitor, right? It's up, it's down. It's very rarely like this. It's very rarely flatline. So, and quite frankly, I don't like flatline. I know you don't either, buddy, because like, it's like, if everything is working and the status quo is fine, where's your opportunity? Opportunity comes with every single crisis.
Yeah.
So
everybody's good until they're not. And then who are they going to think of? And this is why it's like, again, 50 outbound calls a day is an arbitrary number, but choose one that works for you, your comfort level, one that you can hit every single day. And I think like you just build around it. You just stay in front, choose 25, 30 customers, and go after them that are inside of your wheelhouse and your comfort level and everything, and just respectfully stay in front of them. I will tell you this, man. Cold calling recently over the last 6 months has been the best that it's ever been for me in my entire career. Has it led to a ton of business? Absolutely not. But the receptiveness that I've gotten from my prospects has been the most positive that I've ever experienced in my entire career. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I just actually know what I'm going after now, and I'm not just kind of like calling people for the sake of calling. But when I get people on the phone, they give me 30 seconds to kind of explain myself. And if they're good right now, I'll ask them, right? Like, hey, how do I respectfully stay in front of you? And by respectfully, I'm not going to call you next week or in 2 weeks or anything like that, but I'd love an opportunity to stay in front of you for when things change. Is everybody open to that outreach? Absolutely not. But more times than not, people are like, yeah, man, you know what? Stay in front. Once a month is fine. You can call me back in a month, just see how things are going. And it is, man. It's calculated. It's just like, hey, remember me. And that's really the basis of the call. Hey, here's who I am. We talked last month. Is everything okay? It is. Cool, man. Can I call back next month? Yep. Cool. And it's just, again, just staying in front of them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, right now, the biggest win, in my opinion, is just getting the paperwork set up. If you can get the paperwork set up so you don't have to go through that step when the shit hits the fan, that's a win. If you can get set up with somebody to where you're on a spot board, even if you're not moving a single, load with those guys for the next 6 months, it doesn't matter because this will shift. The market's always going to shift. And when it does, if you're set up with companies, you're golden at that point in time. They got your insurance info. They know who they're dealing with. Your bank info is all set up, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. That's a huge step forward right now. So if you guys can just get that, that's a win in my books right now.
Yeah, dude, I agree with that. Cody, how does anybody reach out to you guys? How do they find out more about what you got going on?
You can check us out on anztrucking.com or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And that's the easiest way. Just find me on LinkedIn. I'm connected with Chris. So, if you can't find me, hit him up. He talks to me all the time. So
that works. That's going to be it for today, you guys. Hey, we got guests coming on next week. As always, if you got value in what you heard today, subscribe to the show, you guys. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, chances are your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, and